Okay, hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here today. I am Nick Kanoki, Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and very excited for a conversation with George Galambos, Managing Consultant, Strategic Asset Management at Galambos Consulting. And we want to thank our patron, our Platinum member, Onuma System, as well as our patron members before we get underway. Mike, Mike Ordinero, Executive Director, why don't you talk a little about our patrons?
Sure. So Definitive Logic, Tech Company, ABS Quality Evaluations, and Jacobs have all made great contributions, and so has CGI. But I'm calling out CGI today because they had an event this week in Washington that was just spectacular. And they had federal executives presenting on the way they're working together with various teams and various software initiatives, AI, etc. And it was a pleasure to be there. And they had a wonderful keynote speaker who provided some great insights. I talked about it a bit in the newsletter, but it's worth pointing out that the concept of being a servant leader is really good, and I like that. Want to emphasize that, and thank CGI for having me at their event this week.
Okay, and continuing thanks to all our organizational members. Really appreciate your continued support of programming like this, as well as our upcoming event in Washington, D.C. Mike, do you want to talk again about the upcoming event?
Yes, and it ties into our conversation with George. We're very honored that the National Academy's Federal Facility Council is co-hosting an event with us at the their Keck Center in Washington, D.C. And we're having the GAO present on a report that they've done on deferred maintenance at 4 agencies. It started with Amelia Secoy, who has now left the GAO. It was finished up by Matt Cook and Michael Arms. And Amelia is now a sole practitioner member of the ALN, and so she'll be helping us facilitate that event. And the event will also include a presentation on a National Academy's Federal Facility Council report that came out earlier this year, Strategies to Renew Federal Facilities. It was chaired by Mike Imany, who's pictured here. And Mike Imany is an ALN senior fellow, in addition to his storied more than 40 years career with the federal government. And it was vice chaired by ALN senior fellow and board member Jack Dempsey. So that'll be presented also, and we'll have federal executives talking about their approaches to issues like deferred maintenance as part of an overall strategic asset management approach on how to optimize resources. So we're really looking forward to that. And we've asked George Galambos to talk with us today because he's got some federal experience that kind of helps us lead into that January 10th event. But before we get to that, welcome, George.
Thank you, Mike. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah. So we like to start the discussion with the question, how did you get where you're at right now in your asset management journey? And I'm sure that could take the full 30 minutes, but if you give us the quick version, that would be great.
Sure. I'll give you the brief overview. I kind of fell into asset management accidentally. I had the good fortune back around 10 years ago in late 2012 to be sent by CH Hill to work on a asset management assignment in Muscat, Oman for what was then Haya Water, which was the organization responsible for the wastewater collection, treatment, distribution in the governorate of Muscat, Oman. It was intended to be a 3-week assignment to support the development of some guideline documents as a subject matter expert for wastewater. It turned out I spent 6 months on site, delivering what was then 20% of the one of 5 parts of that strategic asset management project to align their asset management systems with the then British publicly available specification 55, which, as we know, is the forerunner to the ISO 55000 standard. So from that beginning, that really whet my appetite, and began looking for more and more opportunities to engage in asset management consulting. Took the decision then that that's what I hope to be when I grew up. And 10 years later, I've been able to realize that I'm having the opportunity to deliver some pretty significant work with some really good companies and great mentors. Along the way, I've had the opportunity to deliver asset management with Sireka Veolia in Zambia for Lusaka Water and Sewage. Sireka was the French-based consulting arm of the Veolia Water Company. Been able to deliver strategic asset management assignments with AECOM, Parsons Brinckerhoff, with AMCL, a UK-based asset management consultancy, with the Woodhouse partners through their branch offices here in North America, and now on my own. So it's been a great journey. I've loved being a part of the community and learning and growing and helping others.
So that is a great background to being on your own. How long have you been on your own, and what have you been doing, and where are you located?
I'm located in Woodstock, Georgia. It's a community 25 miles north of Atlanta, Georgia. Next month will mark 18 months in independent practice. It's
Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a great endeavor thus far. Currently, I'm doing some work, and hopefully we'll have time to touch on it with Polk County Water Authority under an initiative that the state of Georgia has started. The Environmental Protection Division is requiring an asset management plan for community water systems as a part of their permit renewal process. So I've done some work with some different agencies, either as a sub-consultant for the Woodhouse Partnership or on my own brand, with working with Sheridan College, Carson City, Nevada, helping them do their SAMP, and ISO 55000 gap analysis with Sheridan. Delivered some work with Woodhouse in Saudi Arabia for a SABIC chemical company at their facilities both in Jubail, Saudi Arabia, and domestically at sites in Alabama and Ohio. So it's been a pretty good journey so far.
Excellent. So you said something that let's talk about more later, but I want to say it right now so we don't forget. We have seen the federal government incentivize the creation of asset management plans by withholding funds until you have a plan. This is the first time I've heard of a permit process used as the stick to encourage an asset management plan.
Yeah, it's definitely been growing, especially lately in at some of the state levels, with the state organizations that are responsible. They have delegated authority from the EPA to administer the permitting under the Clean Water and Drinking Water Acts. I believe New Jersey, Michigan, New York State, Georgia, and others have got similar sort of incentives, programs, grant monies available. The state of North Carolina is issuing grants for asset management inventorying. So it's growing. I've noticed really too in the federal market space, recently there's a very significant procurement for the International Boundary and Water Commission, the government agency that takes care of the infrastructure and assets along the USA-Mexico border. They had been asking for IAM qualifications by name, that members of the team are required to have IAM certificates, have knowledge in ISO 55001 asset management system alignment, knowledge and expertise with either PAS 55 or the IAM's conceptual asset management model, GFMAM frameworks. So it's a growing, the knowledge, the recognition of the different global standards and best practices are in fact growing, and it's good to see.
But yeah, thank you for that update. And in addition to doing your consulting work, you're doing a lot of volunteer work for the asset management community. Can you tell us some about that?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I've been affiliated with the Institute of Asset Management now, probably since about 2000, late 2010, 2011. So I've had the good fortune this year to have been accepted for a 2-year term on the USA chapter committee as co-director for branches and membership development. So that's been a great role to help me engage and meet with the nearly 400 members of the 15 branches across the USA, having had the opportunity to represent the IAM at the recent Society of Maintenance and Reliability Professionals annual conference in Orlando this summer. That was a wonderful opportunity. There's been sort of a reciprocal agreement between the two organizations to share membership benefits. So, the potential and the growth and the opportunities that opens on both sides to get exposure to the IAM has had a a focus on strategical asset management, the other on the tactical, sort of at the asset level, hands-on. So it's a great forum through the relationship to share and exchange knowledge and best practices and raise up the stature and knowledge and capability of both organizations. In my involvement with the IAM, I've also been able to volunteer for there's a review group number 7 to look at reviewing and defining the content of the 3rd edition of the Global Forum of Maintenance and Asset Management Landscape. Some of our viewers may be familiar with the 39 subjects grouped into 6 subject areas, developed by the GFMAM and adopted by the IAM as part of their conceptual model. So that should be forthcoming. As you can imagine, it's a global effort with a lot of the world partners and asset management member countries, organizations from far and wide, Australia, the Middle East, Japan, South Africa, trying to translate that effort and bring context in native languages and get agreement on the wording and have consensus on the intended meaning. So that's forthcoming. Hopefully soon we'll see the release of that 3rd edition.
Well, we can have you back when that comes out and focus on that.
Great.
And then we had talked previously, and I liked hearing what you had to say about some of your federal projects. Can you tell us things that are publicly available? We don't want to know anything that is not appropriate or outside of the proper context.
Oh, absolutely. Back in 2000, oh gosh, I'm going to check here. Back early 2022, I had the opportunity to spend about 8 months working hand in hand as a consultant with AMCL on a program for the architect of the Capitol. It was their enterprise asset management 2nd phase of their program. I think Atkins and Faithful and Gould held the prime contract in IDIQ for condition assessments. At the time, AMCL was brought in as a consultant to help with the strategic elements. I got to be involved in doing the initial gap analysis of their asset management system against the 55,001 standard, defining a roadmap and a timeline and the things that we suggested they ought to do to prepare themselves for an eventual ISO 55,000 audit through a 3rd party. So it's part of that EAM effort, was involved in drafting the initial strategic asset management plan. As you can imagine, it was quite an undertaking, had a long process of discovery, gathering all the documents, working with their Enterprise Asset Management Office, their Asset Management Steering Committee, which included a lady I got to know a little bit, Cherie Rexcoat, who's now the acting architect of the Capitol. She was key in helping driving and guiding that effort.
Well, excellent. I'm glad to hear that because we've invited her to speak on January 10th and hope that she is going to be available.
Yeah, sure. That I wish you well with that. She'll have a lot to say, I'm sure. Through that effort, working with their enterprise asset management office, going through clause by clause and looking at the different documentation they had, as you can imagine, an organization of that size. They're responsible for roughly 18.5 million square feet of federal facilities, maybe 580 some odd acres of grounds. Now, this is the Capitol complex. This has got the Congress, the Senate, all of the buildings that really enable the legal and governmental system of the United States to function and thrive. So it was quite an honor, really, to kind of be involved in the stewardship of helping that organization. But that organization has been around since, I guess it was 1793. Their current, it's more than we'd even looked at back then. Their current deferred capital backlog is around $2.6 billion. These are, you can imagine, are the assets and infrastructure that enable governance. We used to make a joke that, heck, if let's say a congressperson couldn't use their restroom, they could end up rushing through a decision just by the biological necessity to get out of the chambers quickly. It could have that kind of an impact theoretically. But seriously though, so many stakeholders, so many strategic objectives, alignment with a lot of overarching policies. Really, the intention was for them to demonstrate to the Congress that they were good stewards of the public funds, and that they were capable and qualified, and that they were aligned to an international standard, and were putting systems in place to make good use of those monies to close that backlog and to truly define what it really is. There's a lot of older legacy data redundancies, so really part of the effort was getting on a handle on what is the actual backlog. Is it more or less or worse than we think, and coming to a realistic number, and then developing a sort of systematic program on how to close that gap over time and gain the acceptance and approval and the confidence of the Congress to issue them the budgets they would request year over year, and slowly work to closing that. And then also, relaying to the Congress, they had a strategic plan. It was I'm trying to look at my notes here. It's on the tip of my tongue. There's a strategic plan with an objective date of the year 2100, and one of the overarching principles was to make the Capitol complex sort of a demonstrable beacon to the rest of the world as what best practice in democracy looks like. And if you're going to do that, you better have working infrastructure, nice facilities, reach all the goals, and really without the funding behind the efforts, it would be unreachable, right? So, the whole EAM was long overdue, and certainly a driver in getting the confidence and the funding necessary to achieve that in their other goals, and support the continuity of the legal and governmental system for this country.
The Asset Leadership Network had visited the offices of the Architect of the Capitol in 2016, 2017, and 2018 because we understood the importance of the institution and wanted to make sure they were aware of it. We hope that our visits encourage them to look at asset management. way of addressing.
I would imagine that, and the former architect came from the DC airport system and was familiar with enterprise asset management, and he was a strong advocate. Mr. Blanton, who's no longer with the organization.
We were visiting with Stephen Ayers, who's an architect.
Okay.
Anyway,
gotcha.
But I'm glad they're doing that. I believe Volpart has a continuation contract with them, and glad they're on track with their.
I just reviewed. They do an accountability report at the end of every fiscal year, and I took a look at this year's, and 4 of the strategic objectives around asset management they were able to accomplish. The only one that remains outstanding is their ISO 55001 formal audit for one of the systems that were part of the limited scope strategic asset management plan that they had initially developed. So hopefully they'll have success with that under the guidance of AMCL. I'm confident once they get a chance to undertake that. Looking back as another at the tactical level, a federal project I did at the Defense Logistic Agency at their Defense Force Supply in Richmond, Virginia. This was a facility that warehoused components for fast air. I'll leave it at that. So, they had a wastewater collection and pump facility. A large number of pipes, manholes, pumping stations, the collection system to capture all of the wastewater generated within that facility, convey it to the municipal, the municipal network that would receive it, treat it, and discharge that to the environment. They had a long neglected maintenance program, and we're finding, this facility was built, I would estimate, maybe in the late 50s, early 1960s, brick and mortar, manholes subject to a lot of deterioration and collapses, and then failures in the wastewater lift stations, and resulting in overflows and making a nuisance and a public health hazard around the facility. So they had engaged Parsons Brinkerhoff to undertake a full condition assessment of all the assets, the wastewater collection assets, primarily around the manholes and pumping stations. Develop a program of rehabilitation, considering alternative means for lining different coatings, life cycle cost analysis, and took that and built a defensible budget request to rectify the situation and encourage a pretty significant extension of life of the system to defer full-on replacement through the rehabilitation effort. So they were successful in getting that funded, and to my best knowledge, it's been ongoing, and they've been happy with the result. So that was certainly another example there of a federal project. When we look around the country, and I'm sure we all get anyone who happens to have a professional engineering license ends up on the mailing list for the ASC and the American Society of Civil Engineers. We've probably all heard about their report card. In an aggregate, the nation's public infrastructure, roads, transportation, electric, water, everything has an average grade of C-, which under their condition criteria, that's mediocre to poor, verging on being so degraded they will reach a point soon that they can't function as intended and offer the level of service that public utilities have committed to the traveling public water users, for the protection of human health and the environment. Their estimate is in the next 10 years or so, there's $2.5 trillion of investment needed to bring that from this C- to an A+ condition where things are fit for purpose and will have some longevity into the future. So nationwide, at federal government, state, local, municipal government level, there's simply not enough money to invest in completely replacing all of the infrastructure. So
So glad you mentioned this, George,
yeah.
because that helps us promote January 10th,
Mhm.
which is going to take an optimization angle. And there is not enough money to deal with all the deferred maintenance of the
Oh,
United States.
absolutely. Yeah.
So it's not an issue of finding the money.
Yeah.
It's an issue of the leadership activities that you described so well with that the architect of the Capitol did.
Mhm.
And we need to be able to apply that in all of the federal and
Yeah,
local.
absolutely. Everywhere it's looking every dollar for every project competes with each other project, and the ones that really bring the best value, whether it be in meeting levels of service, meeting regulatory requirements, meeting what's being committed to the stakeholders and what are in line with organizational goals and what reduces risk. Those more critical higher rank projects will be the recipients of the funding. So it's not all gloom and doom, because the money you save and maybe not over maintaining or not taking care of something less critical is available for other more critical things. So the net benefit will be uh, more sustainability at these organizations. So
Exactly.
we'll see how that comes along. And that's really what's driving the requirements with the state of Georgia. They want a lot of these smaller municipalities, water companies, anyone serving a non-transient community of 3,300 um, uh, served populations, not just connections. Um, to make them kind of force them to look ahead and say, my goodness, in 5 years we might need six, three, $10 million, whatever it might be, depending on your size, and saying, okay, looking down the line at our current rate schedule, are we going to be prepared? Because as an agency, the EPA, the federal government, isn't going to have enough grant money to give to everybody to take care of everything all at once. A lot of these systems will age out in approximately the same time frame. A lot of them post-World War II, and amalgamations of smaller systems, regionalization of infrastructure, and some of these agencies don't even know what they have. They're back on paper records. So it's helping them understand what it is they have, what matters, what's the risk, and what's the cost, and help them to look to the future with rate setting and being having more foresight to being prepared. So when the time comes, as a matter of equity, you can't all of a sudden, there are underserved communities. There are lots of circumstances. The pandemic has impacted a lot of families' capability to pay. You can't all of a sudden take a critical resource for human health like water or wastewater and triple the cost of it. It's just unconscionable, and it would never happen. So, again, it's that trying to realize the value and mitigate the risk, and optimize the decision and the spending where you'll get the best benefit.
Well, George, talk about preparation. I think you're the most prepared guest we've ever had.
Oh, well, thank you. I really am very, very passionate about this stuff. I'm constantly trying to learn and grow and develop as a professional, and give back and help, and we all come up together. We can share and learn from each other. It raises the industry, and it brings benefit to the people who rely on the end users, the public, uh, just all of us together. So I'm quite happy to be invited.
Well, and then we've got to give a shout out to Jennifer Zach, ALN board member and CMO at Mentor Graphics or Mentor APM,
APM.
and uh, Uberlytics. She introduced us to you, and I'm really happy she did. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I look forward to more talks with you. I think we'll figure out ways to get you involved more. So thank you very much. And
Well,
Nick,
thank
if
you,
you want
Mike.
to come on in.
Hello. Yeah. Thanks a lot, George. Really appreciated the conversation with you today.
Nick really got excited about you mentioning sustainability, George.
Yeah, right at the end there, sustainability, equity. You're talking a lot of the things that I care the most about. So great. And big thank you to George, and thank you to our platinum member, Onuma System, as well as our patron members, Definitive Logic, ABS Quality Evaluations, CGI, and Jacobs, and all our organizational members for making events like this possible, as well as our upcoming event, January 10th in Washington, D.C. So hope to see you guys there, and on Thursday at 3 before then, hopefully.
Excellent. So thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Nick. And special thanks to you, George. Really appreciate it.
Happy to do it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.